Hey guys, welcome to Video Game Corner. It's me, Jason, and today I'm going to be talking about Walking Dead. So, last night, the 9th, it's February 9th, 2014, they started the season of Walking Dead back up, Season 4. So, I'm going to be talking about Episode 9. I'll be doing these every week, talking about basically talk about the recap, and I'm going to do a little bit of comparison to the comics from what I know. I've read the first 100 issues of Walking Dead. Now, I need to get back in and read the rest and get current with it, but I haven't done it yet. But, if you guys watched it, there's going to be spoilers in here. This is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, go watch it, then come back, watch this, if that interests you. So, let's go back. At the end of the season, the halfway season finale, episode 4-8, the whole group was in the prison. The governor had come back, and he had found a new group of people, and one of them was actually led by one of his Woodbury guys, and he ends up killing him and taking over, being the boss. And they go in and they bring it. They got a tank, and they come in and they say Rick and the group, or they want to talk to Rick, even though Rick's not in charge anymore. But he goes out there because that's how Rick is, and he says, "Give it up by sundown. Give up the prison, walk away, or there's going to be war." And Rick's like, "We can live together. The prison's big enough. We don't have to fight." And of course, the governor's got Herschel, standing there, ready to kill him. And poor Herschel does get killed. He gets his head cut off by the governor. Now, this didn't happen the same way in the comics. In the comics, Michonne mutilates the governor beyond. I mean, she just rips him up. She just doesn't take out his eye. She does all sorts of stuff to him. And so read the comics if you want to see that. I mean, she mutilates him. See, he doesn't have any love for her. He doesn't want to forgive her. He doesn't understand why she did. He wants her dead. Now, what happens is in the show, the governor sits down with Herschel and Michonne, and he says, "I don't have any ill will. I know, when you killed my daughter and took out my eye, you were just trying to get away, and my daughter wasn't real. My daughter was a walker." So he understood in the show. They made him more human in the show, even though in the comics he's a monster. And I think there's actually a novel written by Robert Kirkman. I think he wrote it. Actually, he wrote it, and he wrote about the governor's history, and it's an actual novel, not graphic. It's not a comic. And I haven't read it, but I'd like to one of these days. And it tells about how the governor got to where he's at. And I'd like to sit down and read it one day, but who knows when that'll be. So he gets to the point where, he kills Herschel. He says, Rick's sitting there, we can live together, and it seems like maybe they're like, well, maybe, and the group's like, well, maybe we can. The bad guys, the governor's people. And the governor says, "Liar." Because the governor's crazy no matter what, no matter where he's at. And he swings and hits Herschel right in the side of the neck with the sword. And it's terrible because everybody loves Herschel. And now in the comics, Herschel died in that attack, but he wasn't a prisoner. He just got shot. And in the attack in the comics, Lori and the baby were still alive. And Lori was holding the baby, and she got shot in the back. I can't remember if it was by the governor or one of his people, and it went through her and hit her stomach and killed the baby too, and she fell on the baby, and they both died. I mean, it was worse in the comics. So Judith, the baby, I don't even know, I think she was saved by one of the other people, but Rick doesn't know it. And Carl, so Rick and Carl take off, and that's where this comes back. This whole episode was about Rick and Carl, mostly about Carl and Michonne. Michonne, it starts out, Rick and Carl are taking off, trying to find somewhere to, safety. Rick is beat to hell. Michonne, she goes and finds two walkers, cuts off their arms, and cuts their jaw out so she can use them as a camouflage. So, like she did before. So she's in the group of all these walkers, and she ends up doing this, and she's walking, and she starts thinking of her past. And now Michonne's got a lot of mental issues. We do know in the comics that she was a lawyer, and that she got out of a marriage, and she lost all of her kids. So we knew she had a family, and we know that we're assuming that they're all dead. We know that her boyfriend is dead because in the comics she did talk to him, like Rick was talking to Lori on the phone. In the comics, he was talking to her on a telephone for a while that he kept, and it's crazy stuff. But you know, they're trying to cope with all this stuff that's going on around them. And I always ask myself when I watch these things is, how would I deal with it? What if my kids were killed? And how would I deal with it? I don't know. We could sit here and say this and that. I would do this and I would do that. And, you know, I'd kill myself, or I'd become a zombie killer, warrior type. Who knows? But either way, you'd be messed up mentally for sure. Whether or not, even if you were going to kill yourself just before that, you're pretty screwed up in the head. It's only natural. And so Michonne's got a lot of issues, but she's got the katana, and she's very tough, and she's a survivor. They're all survivors. Rick's a survivor, Carl's a survivor, Michonne's a survivor. So it starts going on to Michonne's past, and you can tell she's hallucinating or dreaming. And she's thinking about the two guys she had originally when she comes in to the show that she ended up having to kill because they were making too much noise. She knew them in real life. And they're actually pointing that one of them was actually her boyfriend and his friend. Or his brother, maybe. I don't know. But it showed them all talking. And she had a baby, which I'm assuming was her baby, and the boyfriend's baby. And they were talking about art and stuff. But she was dreaming, and then all these things started getting worse and happening. And she's like, "What's going on with you guys?" And they're like looking grittier. Then all of a sudden they have no arms. And she's like, "What's going on?" She freaks out. She wakes up. So you start looking at her past a little bit. They actually delved more into her past than they did in the comics, for at least in the first 100 issues. They didn't talk much about her past, but they did in this because it's being a show, they can do it visually and make a whole dream sequence. So Michonne's trying to deal with everything. And I think what it was in the show, she was actually with people again, and she was feeling less alone. Because it's real scary to be out there, even if you're as tough as she is. It's scary to not have people around you, help, friendship, someone to talk to. So she's all alone after this whole prison incident with the battle, and it's been overrun by walkers. And so she's trying to find somebody. She's trying to just survive. She starts seeing footprints she thinks might be Carl and Rick. She sees like the boots of Rick. So then you go back to Rick and Carl, and Rick is still treating Carl like a little baby. Carl can't stand it because Carl's still a kid, so he's rebelling. It's kind of got a lot of normalcy. So they find this house. Carl ties up the door, and Carl thinks that's fine. Rick's like, "No, we're pushing the couch up against it." So, and then you find out later that it probably would have broke. Because when some walkers try to get through and the door's opening a little bit, and it looks like it probably would have broke. So Carl realized there that, maybe my dad has something. Just for a second. So Carl goes out there. He can't wake up his dad. His dad's so beat up, he's out. And Carl's thinking, we don't know if he was in like a little miniature coma or what. But he was out for a few days. For 2 or 3 days, he's done. Because he was so beat to hell and exhausted. So, and Rick's face just looked like he had a sledgehammer to it. So Carl, he's watching over his dad, and he's realizing, and he goes outside, and he was looking for more food, and he drew the zombies away. They almost got him. A third one showed up. So he had 3 zombies, or walkers. I don't like to use the Z word when it comes to Walking Dead. 3 walkers. He ends up killing them barely, and he gets out of it, and he realizes that was a close call. He vomits up because he had like he go to this house that they went to, and he sees that the kid's room there looks like it was about his age, and there was like video game systems sitting there and books and all this stuff, and he's like, wow. He's even like, he made like a bowl of cereal with no milk, obviously, because they found cereal. And he sits up in his room with a bowl and a spoon, eating the cereal, reading a book, sitting in the bedroom, just trying to feel normal for a few seconds, like a normal kid would. And then he ends up doing all that. He ends up he sees another walker, almost said the Z word again, sees another walker, and he goes in, and this guy, he ends up fighting him, and the walker gets his shoe. And he writes this note, Walker inside got my shoe, and he kind of laughed. And he ends up finding 112 ounces of chocolate pudding in a can, a big can of it, the restaurant style, or you can buy them, I guess, at Sam's Club, as somebody pointed out. And I was looking at that, and I was like, that's so funny. He's just sitting there eating pudding. And I guess, it's something I would do too if you find something, you're a kid, and you find, because all the junk food's gone. And when you do find something like that, you sit down and you eat it, and it's kind of funny. He's sitting there, and you got the walker behind him in the room going, "Argh," and he's just eating the pudding like he's just having a good old time. So he ends up finding more food, going back to his dad. He's sitting there in the room that night, and his dad wakes up, and his dad's making noises like he's turned. So Carl's aiming at him, and Carl's getting ready to shoot him. He's like, I can't do it. He's like, just take me. But then Rick says, Carl, and he starts talking, and then he passes out again, and Carl's like crying, and Carl realizes he needs his dad. All this tough guy crap that he's always doing, and trying to be this tough guy with his dad and being rebellious, he finally sinks in that his dad might know a little bit more about surviving than he does. Especially sitting here by himself without his dad's help for a couple days. And sometimes it's just like in real life, sometimes you got to let your kids fall on their face for them to realize they don't know everything. So Carl finally realized, then the next day his dad finally wakes up, and Michonne goes crazy, kills all the walkers. God, I gotta stop doing that. Kills all the walkers. And even the 2 that she had that she was set up for camouflage, she goes crazy. She's pissed off. She's tired of it. She goes to try to follow the boot prints and see if she can find, if it is Rick and Carl or somebody. So she goes, and it was a really great episode, very emotional episode. Whoa, one of my lights just fell. It scared the crap out of me. The walkers are outside. Anyway, wow. Anyway, so we're going to have to go with the bad lighting now. Lighting's not that great here anyway. Oh. So, the end of the episode, you got Rick finally wakes up. He's talking to Carl. Carl's like, you found all this food. He says, he says, well, Dad, I got to tell you something. He says, what? I ate some of the food. And he says, oh, what did you eat? He says, 112 ounces of chocolate pudding. And Rick just kind of laughs. He kind of smiles because he realizes the whole thing is that, yeah, his kid ate all the pudding, and it's kind of funny. So they kind of realize, and Rick finally says, you're a man now, you're not a little kid. Rick finally realizes that his son can take care of himself. Carl realizes that he's not as smart as he thought he was, and that he does need his dad. And the 2 kind of met in the middle. And I think that I want to see where their relationship's gonna go now. I mean, in the comics, Carl gets half of his face blown off. Rick loses his arm, one of his arms, about right there, at the forearm. It's crazy stuff. Stuff I kind of hope they don't do, because you have 2 really great stories about the same people, same subject matter, and they're running and they're pretty much, they have the same kind of events, but they're different. And I like that. Kick-Ass did the same thing. And I think that, I like the fact that they're leaving them separate. And I think it's really good. I mean, the video games, they're based more on the comics, which I like too. Except that one video game, that first-person shooter, which I didn't mess with because I don't like FPS games. But I'm in Season 2 of Walking Dead's out, the video game by Telltale, and I played the demo, and I'm waiting for the rest of it to come out. But hoping they hurry up because I want to play all the way through it. You play as Clementine in this one. Anyway, getting off track. So, they finally realized, they finally came together. They finally met each other in the middle and realized that they're both wrong and they're both right, all at the same time, which is great. And then you have Michonne, she finally realizes, she finds the pudding. She comes up, and she looks inside and sees them sitting there, and you could just see she had just a sigh of relief, and she kind of starts crying a little bit. And Michonne, she's so tough, she's not going to let you see her crying, anything like that. She finally just says, I'm home. She's found her family, her new family. And she finally gets a breather and gets a break. And you could tell that she felt a whole lot better. So she just knocks on the door. And they're like, what the hell? And they're like, oh, someone's knocking. So they get their guns all ready. And Carl's like, ready to go. Rick's got his pistol. And Rick goes and looks up. And he's like, and he turns around and starts laughing because he could see the relief on his face. And Carl's like, who is it? And he says, it's for you. And that's the end of the episode. And it was a very good start to the second half of the fourth season. So I'm pretty excited about what they're going to do next. Let's see what they're going to bring in. I know that they're going to be, in the comics, they were leading up to this other town that was run by this guy, and it was like Woodbury, except it wasn't all barbaric. Like Woodbury in the comics, it was in the show it was made like out this nice place where people lived, and they had all these problems. But in the comics, Woodbury, they had the reason why Rick loses his arm is it has to do with the whole Woodbury, and they had all these, basically they would put walkers out there and have guys do like gladiator fights. Crazy stuff. And they put Rick out there, and I can't really remember, but Rick had something where he ended up getting his arm cut off or something, and they're doing all this crazy stuff where they basically have all these gladiator fights, and they put walkers all around so you can't go too far and you'll get bit, and it's just insane stuff, and it's just kind of to amuse the people. The governor thought it was real great. People love it. Let's do it. And it's real barbaric. They didn't do that in the show. They made him more civilized. They made him a nicer guy in the show. But, so, there's also this other town they find, which Rick ends up becoming the leader of, and it's a real town. And it's like a real community. Where, it's not like a town, it's like a little housing tract where these people are living, and everybody's got their own house, and everybody is normal, for the most part. And the guy that runs this is a really nice guy, and but he's not he doesn't really want to be the leader. I can't remember the names of everything. I'm wondering if they're going to go to that route, or if they're going to go do something else first. I mean, there is time to do some stuff. I have this feeling that the rest of this episode is going to be them trying to piece themselves back together and get the group back together. Because it's funny, in the comics, Andrea, she's still alive. I mean, around issue 90-something, she's having sex with Rick. Because they're pretty much, out of the original group from the first couple issues, they're the only two left, them and Glenn. And I'm not even going to tell you what happens to Glenn in the comics yet, around issue 100. It's not pretty. I'll tell you, he gets his head bashed in by a baseball bat. I hope they don't do that in the comic, in the show, because he's such a cool character. And I love Maggie and Glenn, and let's see, are they going to find Judith? I mean, let's see what happens. I think it's going to be really good. I'm really excited to see what happens in the show. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I went through pretty much the whole show. Let me know what you guys think about this episode. It's the new content I'm working on. We do more TV show related stuff. I'm waiting for Game of Thrones to come out. waiting for Dark Souls 2 to come out and Castlevania 2, Lords of Shadow 2. I'm going to be doing some stuff with both of those, so it's going to be an exciting next couple of months. So anyway, guys, comments, let me know what you think, and it's pretty much it for today. So this is Video Game Corner, and I'm Jason, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.